What is up guys, my name is Chase, and one of the exciting things with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is the return of traditional dungeons. In the previous game, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, they replaced dungeons, which we would see in pretty much every other classic Zelda game, with these new divine beasts. Essentially what you would do is go inside of these divine beasts and try to regain control of it to save Hyrule. However, leading up to the release of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Nintendo released an Ask the Developer article where the developers of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom talked about the return of dungeons in this new game. They said that they've made dungeons unique to their respective environments, so we think you'll be able to enjoy the wide variety of regional characteristics. This time, the dungeons are huge and each carry their own regional look and feel, just like traditional The Legend of Zelda games. We think they will provide a satisfying challenge for players. They were certainly a challenge to develop. And so after finally getting my hands on this game and playing through these dungeons, I wanted to make this video where we sort of compare the Tears of the Kingdom dungeons to the Breath of the Wild Divine Beasts. And just as a warning, since we will be talking about the dungeons, there may be some game spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom. So first off, let's talk about what I liked with the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom. The first thing that I liked with the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom is that you now have a partner. Basically, in the lead up to every temple, you go to their respective villages, and you bring along one of the villagers who you've previously seen in Breath of the Wild. And because of this, every time you go into a temple, it feels a lot less lonely than going through the Divine Beasts in Breath of the Wild. Where in Breath of the Wild, you were just going through the Divine Beast and fighting a version of Calamity Ganon all by yourself. And obviously, now that you have an actual character with you in the game, it makes character development feel much more natural than Breath of the Wild. And every time you go through a temple, you learn more about the story, and it's like a really nice way to continue telling the story of Tears of the Kingdom. And since a lot of these characters originated from Breath of the Wild, it's really cool that it connects the story of Tears of the Kingdom with Breath of the Wild, and even a little bit with the Age of Calamity game. So having an actual secondary character to go along with you in the temples, I think is a really nice addition to Tears of the Kingdom. The second thing I really like about the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom is that each one feels unique. In Breath of the Wild, all of the Divine Beasts pretty much felt the same. If you looked at gameplay from every one of the Divine Beasts, it would be really hard to tell which one is which, because they all share pretty much the same exact aesthetic, just like brown looking clay. So by the end of it, it all just feels the same to me. However, with the temples in Tears of the Kingdom, each one of them is unique, so you can differentiate all of the different temples that you've visited. And I mean, they're all just based on different elements, but at the very least, it makes it easier to tell which one is the water temple, which one is the fire temple. And all of the temples match the villages that they originate from. So having these dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom that you can actually differentiate, I think is really nice. And the third thing I like about dungeons being in Tears of the Kingdom is that each one is fun to navigate. Especially since in Tears of the Kingdom you have all of these new abilities, it's really up to your own imagination and creativity to explore these dungeons. For example, you can use Ultra Hand to craft all kinds of different Zonai devices to get around, or you can use Ascend to quickly go between different levels of a dungeon. But along with all of the abilities, each one of the temples has like their own little gimmick to them. For example, the Wind Temple has all of these like trampolines, the Fire Temple has mine carts, and so far I've found these little gimmicks in all of these temples to be really fun to use to explore the dungeons. So just being creative and having fun with exploring the dungeons, I think is really great with Tears of the Kingdom. Now with all of that being said, I do have to admit that there were some things that I felt fell flat with the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom. First off, I think my main criticism with the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom is that they all feel kind of samey after a while. Now obviously the actual aesthetic of all of the dungeons is unique. However, the actual objectives of all of the temples just kind of feels the same. First, you have to go to this village and figure out what the heck is going wrong with them. Then you have to go through like a maze or a gauntlet to get to the entrance of the temple. And then when you actually go into the temple, your main objective is pretty much just do this certain thing a number of times. For example, in the Wind Temple, you have to open up all the fans. Then in the Fire Temple, you have to unlock all the keys. And in the Water Temple, you have to turn on all the faucets. I do wish the temples would kind of mix up their objectives every so often. Another little criticism I have to say with the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom is that most of the puzzles in the temples feel pretty straightforward. Now, I'm not gonna lie, for a dumb idiot like me, I think that's actually a good thing. I felt so smart going through these dungeons without having to use a guide. However, I can imagine for some people, they probably would want more challenge out of the puzzles in these temples. Most of the puzzles just revolved around the new abilities that you have in Tears of the Kingdom. And I mean, since you unlock all of your abilities basically from the start, there's not really like a cool payoff of getting this new ability in the dungeon and then putting it to use. So although I'm an idiot that likes simple puzzles, I can imagine there are some people looking for more of a challenge. And the third criticism I have to say with the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom is that they all feel pretty small. In the Ask the Developer article, Takizawa said that the dungeons are huge. And don't get me wrong, of course I respect the heck out of the developers of this game, but in my opinion, these dungeons did not really feel that huge. This time around, every dungeon takes place in a small confined space within their region. For example, the Wind Temple takes place on this big ship in the air, and the Water Temple takes place on its own sky islands. And really, they aren't super duper expansive. In fact, I was able to get through the Water Temple within like 45 minutes to an hour. They still kind of felt like the Divine Beasts from Breath of the Wild, where it still felt like this small, tight, confined structure. So those were some little things that I noticed with the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom, but obviously it absolutely does not take away as to how much fun and how enjoyable this game is. I think the temples are so much fun to discover and explore in, especially with the new characters that tag along with you. Being able to use their unique abilities is also a really cool little added feature to the dungeons. So while it might not feel like a true return to form with the classic dungeons in the old Legend of Zelda games, it's still definitely 100% enjoyable. But let me know in the comments, what do you guys think about the traditional dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom? If you want to see my video where I compare Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, check out the video below. For now, thank you so much for watching. My name is Chase and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.